you'll look at somebody like Tiger Woods. He has a coach that he listens to.
Yeah.
So if he's humble enough to say, listen, my swing is screwed up, I need help.
Yeah.
What makes anybody else think that they don't need help, or they shouldn't humble themselves and listen to mentors?
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
All right. Welcome to the Jerry Brazy podcast, everybody. We've got a guest today, Richard Kaufman. Excited to talk to him. He's got quite the background. So with that said, Richard, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I know we've been going back and forth, and so I'm finally able to do it.
Here you are.
Our schedules are finally mixing.
They finally aligned.
Yeah.
Let's just start. Give us some background. What part of the world you grew up in? Kind of tell us, where you come from that got you where you are today.
I'm from New Jersey, and I'll just give you a quick down and dirty. Grew up poor. My father left when I was 3 months old. We moved around a lot, so by the time I got to junior high school, we moved about 10 or 12 different places. Never made any friends. Had my first drink of alcohol at age 12, full-blown alcoholic by the age of 13. Couldn't handle high school, so I quit that. And I joined the military and at the age of 16, and then I shipped a little bit after my birthday on 17 years old. So joined the military. That's when I found drugs. So not only was I an alcoholic, I was a drug addict at the same time from the ages of 17 and 19. And then I got thrown out for being an addict.
What drove you to the military? I'm curious about that. Was that something that you were just, being 15 years old and knowing that you don't have any options and that you start looking for options? Where'd that come from?
I was walking down the street one day and I seen this. They had a big sign out of the Army recruiter, become a tanker and be able to blow stuff up.
Right.
So I was like, hey, sounds good to me.
Right.
So I went in, did the ASVAB, scored very, very low on math and stuff like that. But in English, I did well. And so that was a job that I took because it seemed the most exciting.
Right. And so for anybody listening, the military, naively to me sounds like the last place that you would be that you would run into drugs, as regulated and regimented as the military can be. How did it come about that you were introduced to that while in the military? Was it part of the military or outside when you had free time? How did that work?
It was when I started hanging out in clubs. Even though you were only supposed to be not in there until you're 21. I still found a way to get in. And that's when I found out that military, they can't drug test for LSD because they can only do a spinal tap in order to do a drug test. So I was like, all right, well, if I'm not going to get tested, I might as well find something I'm not going to get in trouble for.
Right.
And I did that for like 2 years straight.
And ultimately they caught you.
No, I never got caught. I just kept on missing formation. I lost my weapon one time, so they had to shut the whole town down to find my weapon.
Wow.
I missed a funeral detail of a 4-star general, and I guess they just had enough of me. And they're like, "Well, you just can't adapt,
right.
So you're out of here."
Yeah.
So by 19, I got thrown out at the age of 19.
So you're 19 years old, and you went home back to Jersey?
Yep, I went home, moved back in with mom and her husband. And, I traveled the world for 2 years. I partied, then coming home and have to be in bed by 10 or 11 o'clock to be in the house because they got up and worked every day at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was just being disrespectful,
Right.
So they threw me out because I couldn't adapt to being home either.
How old are you now, just so we have some context of what decades we're talking about here?
I'm 50 right now.
Oh, okay. You and I are the same age. So now
Yep, I'm 50.
you're in the 80s, the late 80s, and imagine that you're 19, 20 years old and you don't like being told what to do, even though you're living off a mom at home, right?
Yep, this was 1988.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your next step from there, how'd that work out? What'd you do after 19?
I became a really bad alcoholic and really bad drug addict, living in a crack house, um, and I talked my way back into my mom's house by promising her I would go back to school, but she never knew I'd go back to school to be a bartender. So
Yeah.
being an alcoholic
Yeah.
and a bartender, that didn't go too well at all.
Right.
And that's one of the first major things that happened to me in my life was January 1st, 1989.
Wow. And so the alcoholism started when you were 12, 13. What are you drinking?
Whatever I could get my hands on, whatever was in my mom's liquor cabinet, and I remember Scotch, which was disgusting, Sambuca. And when I got like age 13, I found out if you stood in front of the liquor store and paid people back then,
Yeah.
they'd buy alcohol for you.
Yeah.
So it was the cheapest stuff I can get.
Right. That's so how long were you an alcoholic?
What happened was January 1st, 1988, I get a job bartending for a friend of mine. He's a police officer. He owned a bar, and he hired me to work the bar that night. And everything was going good. Everything was going smooth. People buying drinks for me. I'm doing shot for shot. 8 hours later, I wake up. It's him and his buddies knocking on the door, and they're in full battle rattle, coming to take me to jail because I gave away like $2,000 worth of free drinks and had like $5,000 in my pocket.
Mm.
So they said, "Well, you're probably going to go to jail for grand larceny." So I was looking at 5 years in prison. And the gentleman that I actually stole from said, "Listen, you're 20 years old. If you get us the money back in 24 hours," which I did. I borrowed it from my aunt, my uncle, my father, my mother, and I had to do 90 meetings in AA in 90 days. I hit something like 300 in a row, and I haven't had a drink since January 1st, 1989.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So that was one of my wake up calls was that day.
Let me ask you about AA if I can. I'm fascinated by this. I am you and I have similar backgrounds. I just never liked the taste of alcohol. And I wasn't one of these kids that got, if everybody was doing it, I was going to do it. And I was like, no, that stuff tastes like garbage. I'm not going to drink it. So that's kind of my mentality about alcohol. So I don't know anything about addiction other than, you hear about AA all the time. So I'm curious if we could get into that a little bit. Talk to us about exactly how that works and the benefit of it, because for the most part, I think to somebody who's not a drinker, AA seems like a very positive thing, but there is a faction of people out there that'll tell you I don't need to go and it's a waste of time. So I'm curious from your side. It sounds like it worked pretty well. What was it?
It worked. It worked really well. I mean, the hardest thing was I went to my first meeting that same day, and I was still hungover. But here I am, a 19-year-old kid, and everybody in the meeting probably had to be over the age of 50.
Yeah.
And the first thing they tell me, I said, I'm like, I don't know what to do here. They just told me, sit down, shut up, and listen, because you don't know anything. And I did. And I've been sober, like I said, 30 years, but AA helps out a lot if they have something called the 12 steps, which you can actually turn your life around if you follow them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just going to AA and not following the steps, you could become something like I became. There's a difference between being a drunk a dry drunk and being sober. The difference between being a dry drunk and being sober is a dry drunk is a person that is still an asshole. They just don't drink. And a sober person is a person they try to live a good life, and they try not to be so self-absorbed.
Right. Okay.
So that's that. So, but AA helps a lot of people. Some people think it's a cult. It is what it is. If you don't think you have a problem, then you might not have a problem.
So was it
But if you're,
go ahead.
So if you are having problems, keeping jobs, if you're getting arrested for DUI or getting arrested for public intoxication like I was, then you probably have a problem.
Yeah. What was it? Did it just the door get knocked in and the money getting paid back and the threat of going to jail? Is that what turned it around? Because again, 19 or 20 years old, you're probably not being as clear-headed as you might be as you get older. Was it just, did you have the fear of God put into you, and that was what changed your life?
Oh, I mean, I never thought, even though I wasn't drinking, I never thought I was 30. But it was just when I got into the rooms, I realized that there's other people like me.
Yeah.
There's other alcoholics and drug addicts that are just like me. So now I grew up my life being a lone wolf. Now I realize, I'm not alone.
Right. And that was, again, I keep coming back to the fact that you're 19 or 20 years old. Most people don't come to that don't have that idea until they're much older and mature enough to realize that, because we're all so rebellious when we're 20 years old.
Well, I mean, I was still rebellious until, the next part of my story is after 2 years, I rejoined the military again.
Okay.
I got back in, and I still had the same attitudes that I had. I still knew everything. I was a rebellious man, like you were saying.
Right.
And I was about to be thrown out for a second time on September, the end of September of 2001, and then 9/11 happened, and everything changed for me on that day.
How so?
Well, growing up in New Jersey, like where we are, the house that I live in now, you can actually see the Twin Tower, from here, from my house.
Okay.
And, we all knew people that were there, and we all, it really affected some people. But here I am in the military in South Carolina at this time. And I realized, some people went to work that day and dropped their kids off and never got to come home. And I just started thinking about, if I had a military career. I actually broke down and cried, and actually crumbled into my couch and broke down and cried. Something touched me. I don't know what it is to this day. And I asked the Lord, I said, if you can give me a second chance in the military, I said, if I had a career, which I didn't think I had one, but, I said, I'll dedicate the rest of my life to helping people that can't help themselves. And I went and begged my company commander, my first sergeant the next day, and they believed in me for some reason, because I heard it all before, but
Yeah.
I think they found something, and they let me stay. And thank God they did, because, within a year, I became soldier of the year. I became a non-commissioned officer, and I ended up doing over 20 years in the military.
Wow. Well, thank you for your service. Number one, that I would assume that on those officers that saw something in you, they probably had the same sort of emotions and feelings going on post 9/11, the same as you did. And we all kind of had a way different perspective after that happening. I had an epiphany myself when I was 28 years old, and it seems like Everybody at some point, if you're open and honest, and in your case you had 9/11 happen, and sometimes doesn't even take that big a kind of kick in the head for you to have an epiphany. Many times it happens when you get older and you're mature enough to be receptive to it. But I had one that absolutely changed my life too, and my epiphany was essentially to just shut up and listen, because I knew everything. I was a street kid, the same sort of thing, no education, no nothing. And for me, I had to learn to shut up and to learn that there were people out there that knew more things than I did. And that happened for me at 28, just sitting there out of desperation. So sometimes we can fight that desperation, or sometimes we can take a hold of it and do something positive with it.
Yep. So I decided, to go the positive route. And then the next big thing that happened, I moved to New Jersey, and on my first training mission, I was backing up a Humvee, and because it broke down on the side of the road, and instead of him hitting the brakes, he hit the gas and ran over the whole right side of my body, and ran over my head, and caused me to have an ocular stroke. And that's why I'm blind in my left eye. So at that same time, not only did I lose my career that I fought for, I lost my vision, and that's when I got into a really deep, dark depression. But I didn't use, I didn't drink, but I just got into a deep, deep, dark hole.
And this was when 20 years in?
No, this was 10 years. Is it 10 years? No. I think about 10. That's 8 years ago, maybe 9 years, somewhere around 9 or 10 years ago.
So it effectively, I'm just trying to get a timeline. Effectively ended your career after 20 years in the military.
Yeah, or else I would have done 30. That was my goal, because nobody in my family ever made a career out of it. So I wanted to be the first one to make a total career out of it.
And you enjoyed the life, obviously.
I enjoyed the camaraderie.
Yeah.
I miss the guys. I miss sitting up at 3 a.m. on a tank in the middle of the desert, just talking shit.
Yeah.
That's what I miss. I kind of miss the whole, all right, you have to be up at 5 o'clock. You have to be at PT at 5:30. I miss that whole, the whole regiment.
Yeah.
And then, when you don't, like before, when I was in, even if it was National Guard, you still had to do PT tests. You still had to keep your hair the right way. You still had to do all that. And then all of a sudden, you don't have that anymore. You don't have that. You don't have a mission.
Yeah.
And it's kind of scary when you're walking around without a mission anymore.
And I'm starting to deal with that firsthand. I have a 22-year-old son and an 18-year-old son, and my 22-year-old son is going to the Marines, and my 18-year-old son was going to go to college. And he said, he came to me, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, and he said, "Dad, I think if I go to college, I'm not disciplined enough, and I'll just screw it up and play video games and not do what I'm supposed to do." So he was smart enough to know that he needed that discipline and that regiment and somebody telling him what to do. And so he is going to be an infantryman in the Army. He ships out on January 6th here coming up. So I get that. And I was pretty proud of my son for realizing at 18 years old that, if he went to college, it was probably just going to be party central and he wouldn't get much work done. So he was going to go the military route.
Well, he's either going to love it, or he's going to hate it.
Yeah.
There's no middle ground.
Okay. Yeah.
It's either you join and you can't wait for your 6 years to be up, or you just love it so much the time just flies by.
And that was your experience.
The second time, yeah. The first time I had a ball.
Yeah.
But the second time when I went in and, after I got saved that second time, I decided, I'm going to stick with the winners. I want to, I was in E1 because I got busted from E4 to E1. And then after they gave me that second chance, I would hang out with people that were 5 and 6 ranks higher than me. Because I want to do what the winners did.
Yeah. That's,
so if they showed up early, I'm going to show up early. If they stay late, I'm going to stay late.
Right. That I love that. That epiphany I was talking about earlier that I had at 28 was really shut up and listen. And then the results of that shutting up and listening for me was to go out and find. I got rid of all of my friends for the most part that we spent all the time in the bar watching sports, talking about sports, playing sports, talking about playing sports, right? You know, that the whole group of us kind of did all of those same things day in and day out. And I had a circumstance come up that I had something put in front of me that I didn't know what it was. It was a business opportunity. But again, I'm a kid from the streets. What do I know? And I remember thinking to myself, man, you better shut up and listen and find people who are smarter than you, find people that are smart, that know more than you do, that you can learn from. And so that happened to me when I was 28 years old, just the same as it happened to you, different set of circumstances, obviously. But I got rid of the people around me, and I started surrounding myself. Instead of being the smartest guy in the group, I wanted to be the dumbest guy in the group. As hard as that was to do, I'm sitting here today because of the things that I learned listening to people who knew a hell of a lot more than I did.
No, that's true. It's kind of like, if you are the smartest person in your group, then you need to find a better group.
Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And unfortunately, at my age, it was a lot harder to, like Gary V is a big mentor of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot harder taking advice from a 30-year-old,
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, all right, well, you have to humble yourself in order to sometimes, succeed. You have to humble yourself.
Yeah, right. So you lost your eye, and then that was essentially that ended your military career, I think you said?
Yep. And They said, well, you can't shoot, so we don't need you anymore. Nice seeing you. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
And then, then I got home. I mean, I didn't get home. I met my wife and my newborn baby. And it was kind of, we were down the shore, and it was bittersweet because now I get to spend time with my wife and my family more.
Right.
But then it's kind of, bitter where it didn't end on my terms.
Sure. Right. Right.
So, but everything, like my mentor, Ed Milet, says, everything happens for you. Nothing happens to you.
Sure. Right.
So either you take it as a teachable moment or you're just going to be miserable your life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But I understand though did you have a backup plan, or were you just sitting there staring into the abyss trying to figure out, okay, what in the hell am I going to do next?
Well, this whole time, no matter where I've been stationed, I always had a job at a GNC, a vitamin shop, or a gym. So I've been in the health and fitness industry, for over 32 years. And so this whole time I was in the National Guard at this time. I still held a full-time job, which I still hold today.
Okay.
So I've been there 10 years. So the military was just, more just giving back, doing something for somebody that they can't pay back.
Right.
Like whenever hurricanes happened, we would go out while everybody else was running away. We'd be running to the hurricane.
Right. And that sense of purpose that you had obviously was important for you. It sounds like it was a significant part of your life post 9/11.
Yeah, well, it's still. Because it took me about 5 to 7 years to find a purpose, a real big purpose again, and it's just been about 2 years now that I found my purpose.
So let's talk about that. What is that purpose? I'm assuming it has something to do with that hat.
Okay. Yeah. And so every time somebody asks me, why do I wear a hat? The reason why I wear this hat or a hat, on any podcast or any live I do, is to honor Chris Kyle, that gave his life helping to another soldier with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And I promised his family that every time I would go live, I would wear a hat. And that's why I do wear the hat.
Did you have some interaction with him or just that commonality of the military?
Yeah, just the commonality of the military.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to give a way to where I can honor him. Because sometimes after years, something happens, people forget about people.
Sure.
And that was just my way of giving honor to him and
Yeah.
his family. 2 years ago, I was on a podcast. The gentleman named Donnie Boyven, he has a podcast called The Success Champions. And we were talking about, in the past, I've worked with guys from the NFL, Major League Baseball, WWE. And we started talking about the health and fitness. And then I started telling him my backstory. And I kept wanting to talk about the health, fitness and stuff, but he kept on bringing up my backstory. And he's like, you know what? He's like, you know how many people are out there hurting right now that you can help just by telling your backstory? And I never thought of it that way. And that's how I started. I wrote my book after that. And that's how I just found my mission into helping, people that are struggling with, drug addiction, alcoholism, PTSD, deep traumatic brain injuries. And now that's just my way of, of paying it forward.
The book, I apologize, I don't have that written down here. What's the name of the book? Let's tell our listeners what book and how can they get it?
It's on Amazon. It's called A Hero's Journey from Darkness to Light. And it came out January of last year.
What was that like, writing a book?
Very cathartic, because I actually had to talk to some people that I did some stuff to that I don't remember doing. And I had to go back and ask for some forgiveness of things that I omitted in the book that I didn't remember. So I didn't put it in the book. And then when I had to go back and apologize after they read it, but it was kind of like, you had to go back and think of, what part of all the problems that I caused? I forgave everybody else, and then I had to ask myself for forgiveness. So after that, it became like, okay, I could start over my life. That part is in the past. Now that, now it's all gone.
Right.
And it was nice because, when I get older, when I pass away, my children and grandchildren will be able to look back and read my book and say, well, that's what Daddy or that's what Grandpa was about.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. That's why I do these podcasts. That's I've said this often. We're not selling anything. I don't have anything here to give away. My story, my backstory is very much like yours is. I come from institutional poverty, what I call it. That's multi-generational institutional poverty. I have 8 brothers and sisters. For me, I'm changing that dynamic, right? I've gone into business for myself, and I've done very well, and I own lots of different things in real estate, and the kind of things that will change my children's lives and their children's lives, unless they screw it all up, after I'm gone. But we do these podcasts because, imagine having, I never met my grandparents, but imagine me, having your grandfather to give you his advice from his perspective, say during the Great Depression. And I thought, man, that's pretty valuable. And so we do this. I do this much like you do, to tell my story and to tell people. I mean, my big story is, or my big push here for this podcast is telling people what's possible. If I did it, I'm living in a flop house when I'm 17 years old for $25 a week with a shared bathroom on a single floor with hookers and heroin addicts. That's me at 17 years old, and now at 50 years old, here I am, and my companies have done hundreds of millions of dollars. It's possible. It can be done. That's with no education. That's just with straight hard work and keeping your nose as clean as you can. And so that's my story in a nutshell that I tell. And the other part that kind of rung true with me, what you just said, also is that the epiphany that you, or the what was the word you used when you wrote it? It was cathartic. What I found is as I was trying to figure out which way I wanted to get kind of my message out, just to kind of help other people the way we just talked about, I said, okay, I'm going to write it all down. I don't know if I set out to write a book necessarily. I'm going to write it all down. And again, I saw, murders and suicides, and I didn't think I'd live to be 25 years old. And I grew up in gang-infested drug land. And so I started to write all this down, the stuff that I had seen, and writing it down was It was a hell of a lot easier to think about it than it was to write it down. The process of writing it and the how slow it is to write relative to think or to speak made me look at the words. And I eventually I quit and I said, nah, I'll just it's one of those things I put on the back burner that I'll come back to because the just living it again through writing it down. I understand why you would say that that's cathartic because I want to say it was much more emotional than I thought it would be. Much more.
Yeah.
I was living it again to a much greater extent than I had at any other point just thinking about it or telling a story.
Yep, because it gets real. When once it hits the paper, once hand hits paper, and unfortunately, when you're writing a book, you see the word "I" a lot, and if you've been through so many issues, maybe it's not everybody else. Maybe it's you.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm the problem.
Right.
So it was great to do that. But I wrote it longhand. I mean, I actually wrote it on a yellow piece of paper.
Yes.
So it took me forever. But it was just the way. And then I had to go, like you said, go back and apologize to people. And then most of all, forgive myself.
When I write, I do the same thing. I write it by hand because, again, it's much more personal that way. And you can't write as quickly. And back to that story I just said, for me, that seems to be the way that works best to get the most out of what I'm writing. And probably I write better when I'm writing by hand anyway. When you're typing, it's easy to just kind of fly through it. So I don't I don't disagree, and I got to commend you for doing that. Well, that is an undertaking that I've not been able to finish, and I gotta assume that felt pretty good when you finished that book, or at least you thought you were at the end of it.
Well, once I finished it, and then I told everybody I wrote a book, and I talked to certain people in my family, and they're like, "Wait a minute, are you talking about me in the book?"
Yeah, right.
But I'm like, no, it's I'm not calling out anybody in the book. It's not about you. It's not about anybody else. It was just a way of just to tell my story, to let people know that it's not where you're from. It's where you end up.
Right.
No matter what no matter what you've been through, everybody loves a comeback story.
I am where I am in spite of where I came from, not because of it. That's what I've always said, that you can overcome. It's so cliche, though, I mean, here's two of us having this conversation with similar backgrounds, and it's so cliche how much this gets bantered around out there that it's unfortunate because it's real. And society today and the internet and media, they teach all these kids that that you can't do it, that it's impossible, and that you're poor because of some hand of some government or some bank somewhere or some rich guy's taking that money from you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And then guys like us come along and say, no, you can dig yourself out of that through hard work and self-reflection and introspection. But it kind of tends to ring hollow at times, although I don't know. What's your experience been with me? I guess kind of feel like it's they hear it and it gets ignored, even though it's reality, because the pressure and the noise from the other side that's telling them the exact opposite is so loud.
It's true. I agree, but I also agree that there's people that out there. They just if you have. I was talking to somebody today. We were talking about education in America, and if you have a smartphone, there is no reason for you not to be educated in the United States.
Right.
Because you can learn anything, and most of it's free.
Yes.
I mean, you can watch, thousands of hours of YouTube on being a mechanic, and you can pretty much, figure it out.
Right.
So,
you can listen to MIT teachers teach classes for free.
Yeah, you go on TEDx and listen to speakers, but I think a lot of it is like saying if me and you were hanging out, and then all of a sudden, there's people that want to keep you, your friends, they want to keep you down because they don't want to see you go further than they are.
Sure.
So I think a lot of it's peer pressure that say, there's no reason why you can't become, a speaker, or you can't become a best-selling author. It's
Right.
just people, you can't, you have to cut through the noise.
Yeah. Back to, go ahead.
And then I think you just have to find your tribe.
Yeah.
The same forward people thinking that where you want to be.
Yeah, the ones that'll challenge you. That's for me, that's what I enjoy the most, is finding people that'll challenge me, and that you can have conversations and arguments with, that are constructive, and challenge what you believe and challenge what you think. There's so much more out of that than there is going with the crowd, and hanging out with your boys that kind of, you're all the same and you're talking about the same thing. The problem I've had is how do I convince people that experience of kind of lowering yourself to let the smarter guys talk while you learn is refreshing and beneficial in a way that knowing everything never can be. Does that make sense? Did I say that right?
Yeah. Well, it makes a lot of sense because, I'm an avid reader. I only have a 9th grade education, but I'm a very avid reader. I have like 5-7 books going on at all times. And it amazes me that you'll look at somebody like Tiger Woods. He has a coach that he listens to.
Yeah.
So if he's humble enough to say, listen, my swing is screwed up, I need help.
Yeah.
What makes anybody else think that they don't need help, or they shouldn't humble themselves and listen to mentors?
Right. Yeah, that's critical. Finding a mentor. We say it all the time here on the podcast. I've had 2 in my lifetime that were just absolutely critical, and I tell anybody who's listening to go find a mentor. That it will change your life as long as you find the right one. And the thing about mentors is that we're reluctant to go find them, particularly us guys, when we're younger, because we think we know everything, and that's when we really need them the most. And then on the flip side of that, it's been my experience that those guys, those mentors, whatever it is that you want to learn more about, are more than happy to help if they're just asked. And we're reluctant to go ask, be it business, or somebody's been married for 25 years, or somebody had great kids, or whatever it is. Somebody's a great mechanic, whatever your thing is that you want to know about, just a well-rounded life, whatever it is, you go find that mentor, but you're like, he doesn't have time for me, and she doesn't want to talk to me. And the reality is, and I want to say this again to anybody listening, you just got to go ask, because most people like to help.
Well, and the big thing is, people don't realize, I just had a big talk about with a psychiatrist, that they say you are the average of the 5 people that you hang around with the most.
Yes.
So if you're listening to, say, a Gary V, or or Ed Milet, if you're listening to him every day for hours on end, it eventually gets into your subconscious, to where your subconscious doesn't know if he's a real person, if he's a real friend. Your mind doesn't know the difference. So even if there's somebody out there saying, well, I can't find any mentors, just start listening to mentors.
Yeah.
Pick a few. You don't have to know them personally. I badgered Gary V until I finally get to meet him. And I badgered Ed Milet until he just invited me down to go at one of his events. But it's kind of like, you got to get rid of the white noise. I don't listen to news. I don't listen to anything negative. Maybe if it's on Sports Center, that's the only way I'll know if it happened.
Yeah.
You have to get rid of a lot of noise in your life.
Yeah, you have to put in the effort to get the return. It's not going to just come to you. And it's easy to be, woe is me. I had a tough background. I had a tough life. I got screwed. The military screwed me. My parents screwed me. The school screwed me. Life screwed me. The cops screwed me. There's always, everybody has those. Everyone has them. And the reality is, it's fairly simple. It has been for my life, at least, which is I just take responsibility for everything.
Well, that's one thing. I just got finished reading Grant Cardone's book, 10X. And the one thing that popped out of me out of the whole book, he said, everything that happens in your life from now on, if you say it's my fault, everything else is going to end up gravy, because you're taking responsibility of everything.
Yeah.
It's nobody else's fault for
Right.
anything.
Yes.
And then, so if you're just taking responsibility of what you're doing, then you can't really blame. If you're a failure, guess what? It's your fault.
Yeah. And fighting that human nature to blame others is a big weakness that we have as humans. And the thing about taking responsibility for everything is it gives you a clarity of thought that you would not otherwise have, meaning your mind isn't clouded with he did it, she did it, and this is why. I made a mistake. The mistake was I started here. What if I could go back and do that again? What would I do different? Okay, everybody, this is what we're going to do. My fault. Let's do it this way. And that clarity of thought that you get by taking responsibility for it, you don't have if you're pointing fingers. So it makes it that much more difficult to learn from each to learn from each experience if you're busy pointing fingers. And for me, that's been a key to success.
Well, I like when they say that when you're pointing a finger at somebody else, there's four pointing right back at you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Let me get back. I want to talk to you before we run out of time. Something that's important to me, and you've got on your list here, is veteran suicide. And I'm I don't even know what to say about the number of veterans. I think it's something like 6 or 7 a day, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm
way off. That's why I said it.
Well, the average, the real numbers are, and it's going to shock you, that 35 first responders, including 22 veterans and 2 active duty soldiers, commit suicide every day.
Yeah. Wow. 35.
And that's only with 22% of the states reporting suicides.
Wow.
So it's up to about 100, 105 a day.
And what is the, it's such a terrible subject, but I guess you have to step back from it to analyze it. What are the reasons why that is? What from in your opinion, having been in the military, what are we doing wrong? Why is this the case?
In my opinion, there's not enough of this. 2 guys sitting here talking and just saying, all right, I'm struggling with this. And the other soldier would be like, all right, well, let's just sit and talk about it. Because once you get out of the military, I never had any really cool jobs in the military, but, say if you get these guys are like Navy SEALs, if you get these guys that are operators, they're taught how to kill for 20 years. All of a sudden they get out of the military. What do you do now?
Yeah.
You can't just go work at UPS. You know what I'm saying? So you lose your mission, and then you're also starting to go through everything that you went through, all your missions and everything, and you have nobody to talk to. I think that's a big
the isolation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because we're taught to isolate. We're taught not to go for help. We're all big bad guys. We're all hoo-ha. We're all manly. Suck it up, drive on, and then because when you're in the military, you either have a squad which is like 7 people, or you have a team which is like 4 or 5 people, and your family. Everybody's family issues. Everything. All the goods and the bads about a person. But then when you get out, all of a sudden you don't have that anymore. And you're all alone with your thoughts, and that's a bad place to be in your head.
So is it the thoughts and the experiences that then are brought on by the loneliness or the isolation that ultimately does them in, not necessarily the isolation by itself? The experiences will overwhelm them. Is that fair to say?
Sometimes it depends. There's some people that have done 30 years in the military and never had any issues. They came back fine. It could just take one thing to trigger. It can also, like they say that, the way you act as a man in your 30s and 40s are things that happen between the ages of 3 and 11. So some of that stuff might kick in, and then you just have a big old hurricane, everything coming at you at once, and you don't talk about it. You don't just say, hey guys, Jerry, I need somebody to talk to. Let's go have a cup of coffee or something.
Right.
Because we feel too proud. we feel too proud that, well, I might need some help.
Yeah. If you could then, with that being said, if you could do one thing, if you're the ruler of the world, and we come to Richard and we say, Richard, what is the one thing we need to do to help slow down or stop this suicide rate? What is that one thing?
Help stop the stigma that that you're weak, because I know in 90% of the police departments, if they find out that you're going for mental health, they will not let you stay on the job.
So people cover it up
If you're
because
going
they're
for
going to
help.
because they're
So
going to lose their
people, they're
jobs.
like, what? Yeah, because you're thinking, all right, I got 18 years in, I'm struggling, and I know that if they find out I have PTSD, they're not going to let me carry a weapon anymore. My
Yeah.
career is over.
Yeah.
So, I'm just going to suck it up.
Well, I think I lost you.
It just froze up.
There we go. We're back. Yeah, I think that I there's a show I watch on television. I forget the name of it. It's in New York, and this rich, billionaire guy has this trading floor, and as part of this group, he has a full-time psychiatrist, right? Because these guys all work 60, 80, 100 hours a week. And I wondered, as you were telling me that, it made me think about that. Billions is the name of the show. But as you were talking, I was thinking about that. How much access do military personnel, either while they're in the military or outside of the military, how much access do they have to, I mean, it doesn't even have to be psychiatrists. It could be therapists and things of that nature, to give them somebody to talk to?
Normally, I have to admit, the VA's been very, very good to me. They've done wonders for me. But normally it's after you get out, because if if I'm in a platoon with a guy and he says, well, I need to go see the psychologist, they're going to take some of his privileges away. He's not going to, and then you're going to have guys that are going to be like, well, wait a minute, if he's going to have a problem if we go to war, can I trust him to not flip out?
Right.
So a lot of them will just, carry it inside and be like, I'll deal with it when I get out.
So you don't have that same privacy that you have outside of the military, inside, if you're talking to a psychiatrist.
Well, in the military, there is no privacy because,
Right.
Like I said, when I was on the tank, there was 4 of us and we were together, 11 months out of the year. We knew everybody's kids' names. We knew whose wife was cheating on who's doing this, who's boozing it up. You know everything about them.
Yeah.
So, there is no hiding. They're going to be like, well, hey, Joe, where'd you go? I see you're at the shrink's office, and then it just spreads.
Right. Now that might be, I don't know, would that be a good option if those if the guys in active duty had somewhere to go to talk to that they knew wasn't going to be broadcast or wasn't going to be shared up the chain of command?
Well, I think now it's becoming where, with the numbers that they are, that it's becoming more welcomed, that they might have like a company chaplain, say,
Yeah.
where everybody goes to see the chaplain,
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's, even so, if you talk to that chaplain, maybe everything will be all right. So they're kind of getting wise, because when they're seeing these numbers, they're seeing, 2 active duty soldiers a day committing suicide, and 22 veterans a day.
Yeah.
They start seeing these numbers. They're like, well, maybe they do need help when they're active duty.
This is where it comes back to where you said, if you had the supreme powers, just change that stigma so that people, I see now, if you change that stigma, people are more willing to talk, and I mean, I was never in the military and I don't want to compare myself to it, but I had a very difficult and violent upbringing, and I didn't talk about it for 25 years. Just now, here in the last few years, have I started talking about it because of exactly what you're talking about. We didn't talk about it. Men don't talk about those things. Compartmentalize that stuff away. Put it away. Don't let it be part. You're a sissy if you talk about it. And now, as a 50-year-old, I'm like, that's person saying, what the hell was I thinking? But I think that's ingrained in us as young men, and it is stigmatized, I think, to some extent. So I agree with you, and I see that now, that's really what, if we can start there, then when you're on the tank, you're not judging the guy next to you for going to the shrink.
Yeah, because then you might all be going to the shrink. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Right. And realistically,
So,
you probably all should be going to the shrink, right? There should be
yeah.
a regular time. All right. We got a couple of minutes left. Tell me, what do you do for fun?
My favorite thing is being a husband, being a father, and those are my things that I love to do. I wouldn't give it up for anything in the world.
How many kids?
I got a 17-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a baby, a 7-year-old.
Oh,
Little girl.
wow.
Yeah, so
Good for you.
she'll always be my baby.
Yeah. Good for you. That's fantastic. Yeah. I say all the time, my kids, like I said, are 22, 20, and 18, and I say all the time, I'd give up my fortune to have them be, 5, 8, and 10 again. That, for me, was there's just nothing better than when they were kids. They're great kids now, and I love my kids, but, there's something about them. Hearing you be 50 years old and have a 7-year-old, I understand that. You'd think the opposite, but I think that'd be great.
Yep, and now like I said, besides my family, which is number one, is helping veterans and people that are struggling. That's my biggest passion.
Yeah. And how do you do that?
I have people that have reached out to me through, like you said, through Zoom. I have my own show on Monday nights. It's called the Monday Night Comeback on Facebook. I have a different guest every week that comes in. Through my book, I go public speak. I talk to people. So it's a variety of different ways that I get. If somebody knows that they got a buddy that's struggling with suicidal thoughts, they'll send them right to me.
Right.
And then we'll hop on a phone call, or we'll end up talking. So a lot of people, they know that I'm the guy to go to if you need somebody just to listen and to say, okay, like we're doing now. All right, we've been there, we've done that. Now let's get through it and help you thrive.
Yeah.
So I'm that guy that's willing to stand in the gap for other people.
So if for anybody that's listening that knows somebody from the military that's looking for help, specifically the military, since that's what we're talking about, where would you refer them? What should somebody do if they know somebody that's struggling?
Well, if they want to reach out to me, they can do that. And the great thing is, when I met Gary V, I said, Gary, give me one thing that I can take home that I can, put in my business starting today. He said, well, make yourself a hashtag. So I started hashtagging everything I do, hashtag the comeback coach, which is obviously. So now if somebody wants to find out what I'm doing or how to get in touch with me, all they got to go into their toolbars, hashtag the comeback coach, and it'll come up to everything I'm doing and every way to get in touch with me.
Okay.
And it's free.
So let's go through that. It's Richard Kaufman. Your email is Rick Kaufman, RickKaufman 2015, Rick Kaufman 2015 at yahoo.com.
Yep.
Or you can hashtag him at the comeback coach. Is that correct?
Yep. You hit that and everything will come up from my Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, everything comes up.
You can find it all there. So if you guys, if anybody knows anybody that is struggling out there with really addiction, alcoholism, Rick's been homeless, blind in one eye, in and out of the military, he has seen it all. So, and is willing to help. And if he can't help, I'm sure he can direct anybody looking.
And also the last two chapters of my book is what people with suicide tendencies, what suicide actually looks like. And then the last chapter is, what does addiction actually look like? Because most times people have no idea what they think addiction is. It really isn't.
Yeah. Not that heroin addict on the corner that is emaciated and close to death.
And if they do pick up the book, it's only 99 cents. All the money goes to a charity called Joint Task Force 22-0. So I make no money off every book.
Tell us the name of
It's
the
all
book.
about,
Tell us the name of
a
the book
hero's
again.
journey, a hero's journey from darkness to light.
A hero's journey from darkness to light. Oh, one more thing before I let you go, Rick. I'm blind. It's amazing. I'm 50 years old. You're 50 years old. We have a lot in common. I'm blind in my right eye. And
I'm
so,
blind to my left.
yeah, I
So
lost mine when I
have-
was got a virus when I was 14 years old. I'm curious. This is just a personal question. My kids always give me trouble about my lack of depth perception. Right? They're always messing with me. And so this is, like I said, just a personal question. How'd you deal with losing that depth perception, or was it that big a deal for you?
It wasn't a big deal, I guess, because never took that victim mentality.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it is hard. I know. I give my wife a lot of props. She has my blind side, literally.
Yeah.
And I know I'm always dropping stuff and making a mess. So, but my kids have been great. My kids, laugh about it.
Yeah.
So it's not taboo in our family.
No, it's the case with me too. Anybody wants to is free to give me a bad time. I always say I have to wear the virus got into my other eye too, so I have terrible vision, but I wear contact. And I always say the benefit of it is I just I buy a set of contacts, but I get them for twice as long because I can only wear one of them.
Yeah, and once you put it out there that it's funny.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about stigma.
Yeah, I had to learn to play sports all over again. I had to learn to throw a ball and catch a ball and shoot a ball. And I have to shoot. I'm a hunter, so I have to shoot my bow left-handed, and I'm right-handed. I have to shoot a gun left-handed, and again, I'm right-handed. And so you just learn to do all of those things. But I never lamented it. I just said, it's what I'm stuck with. It's what I got to do, and you learn to do it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Rick, I enjoyed the conversation very much. Thanks for coming on. I'm glad we were able to put it together.
Yeah, just let me know when it goes live so I can share it out. And if there's any way, I finally found you on Facebook today, so I'll be promoting you because as you're a friend now.
Excellent.
So I'll be promoting you as much as I can.
You can, and again, the Jerry Brazy podcast or Jerry Brazy is where you can find all that. A Hero's Journey from Darkness to Light. Richard Kaufman, hashtag the comeback coach. And you can find everything you want to do, what you need to know about him or reach out to him. Rick, you're doing the Lord's work, man. I appreciate it very much. There's not enough guys like you in the world.
Well, as long as there's one guy like me, that's all we need.
Yeah. Have a good night. I appreciate it again. Thanks, pal.
God bless you.
Yeah. Bye-bye. All right. A good one.
Yeah.
Interesting dude, huh?
Yeah. He's, it sounds like he's helping a lot of people.
Yeah.
And he's trying to, take the experiences that he went through in life, good and bad, and try to turn that around into a positive thing for others.
There really is a common theme or thread through a lot of the people that we have on that they've had experiences and they want to pass those experiences on to other people that can hopefully learn from them, which obviously this whole podcast is about us talking about when I was a kid and what I've been through. And the neat thing about you is that we've got you then from the 26-year-old going, oh, yeah, I see it this way, or I might see it that way, so you can get some gauge on how well it's received. So from that perspective, what he said made sense, right?
Yeah, no, totally. And I have some knowledge of, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and whatnot as well.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And so it's cool, though, seeing his whole journey from not just within AA, but with the military too. He's literally carrying out the program of Alcoholics Anonymous for the 12 steps like he was talking about. The milestones kind of per se within those 12 steps are figure out the shit that you've done wrong, make that stuff better by apologizing or working through it in your own self-reflection type of way. Fix your shit, clean up your life, and then help other people. And you see that same kind of thing. Not only that's what he used to get past the drugs and alcohol 20 years ago, but now he's using that to get past the emotional trauma and everything else like can come from the military career.
Yeah, that AA is I think at times, like I said in the interview, it gets a bad rap, but I don't know why. That seems like everyone I talk to about AA, and we've had lots of people on here with those kind of, that are recovering from whatever, all speak really highly of AA. So that was cool.
I think the main issues with AA stem from the community inside of it. Honestly, so the community of AA can be the good and the bad. So each AA meeting and AA program is an alcoholic running a chapter to help other alcoholics.
Yeah.
And so with that, I mean, we're all human. We all have our faults. So you see a lot of rules and suggestions and other things that pop up that weren't ever mentioned in the original curriculum, so to speak. And that can morph into different things, and you get a bunch of addicts together. Some people would go off the wrong way.
Everybody's got a complaint.
Yeah. So the general principles, though, and those 12 steps, I completely agree with what he said. That anybody going through anything, if you go through those steps and actually give your best effort, it's going to make your life better. Just because it teaches you self-reflection, making up for your mistakes, and trying to better your life.
Yeah, that's and can you imagine being a alcoholic at 13 years old or 14? What do you say? He had his first drink at 13 and
11 full blown by like 12 or 13.
13, yeah. Can you imagine being an alcoholic at 13 and what that does to you?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen people. There was people that lived in my neighborhood that would just go to their parents' alcohol bar and every day and just fill up a water bottle with a mix of a little bit of anything and that they had in their bar so they could drink without their parents getting away with it.
Yeah. Lower each fifth by just a little tiny bit.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
And but they would be sitting there drinking that on the way to school at 6 o'clock in the morning and middle school, high school. And
but pretty soon the bottles are all empty though. Then what do you do?
Get grounded and find it somewhere else.
When my mother made one quick story. My mother made cookies when I was a kid. I think I've told this one before, but I'll tell it now because it's along these lines. And again, there's 9 kids, right? And so I'm a little kid, and she made these cookies, and they were no bakes. And so you bake them or you make them. They're all hot, and you put them in the refrigerator. Well, she puts them in the refrigerator on however big a cookie sheet is, and she's like, all right, nobody touch these, right? They got to cool down. And I think she came back 2 or 3 hours later, and each time that one of us would go in there and swipe a cookie, we would move the cookies around, right? To make it look like there weren't so many cookies missing.
Yep.
Until it got to the point where us little kids got in there, we're grabbing it, but we were smart enough to at least leave 2, and we centered them right in the middle of the coffee of the cookie
pan.
sheet. Yeah. So that it would look like, nothing to see here. There's 2 goddamn cookies sitting on the cookie sheet.
That is too funny.
Yeah. That's at least it was cookies though, not alcohol.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. I hope everybody enjoyed that one. That wraps up this episode. Thanks everybody for tuning in. You know where to go to check us out. YouTube and Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, Google, Reddit, Jerry Brazy on all of them. Don't forget about Spotify. Send us your questions to questions@jerrybrazy.com. And remember, opportunities are everywhere, people. You got to go get them. Peace.
Peace out.